I'm going to show you how to create a word cloud in R using RStudio. So for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to assume that you have R and RStudio installed on your computer. If not, there's no shortage of great material and content out there on how to do that. So we won't go through that here today, but a lot of good stuff out there if you need it. So when we're creating a word cloud or really doing any sort of data analysis or data work in RStudio, first we need a data set to work with. So if you already have something that you want to work with, that's great. Otherwise, if you just want to follow along with me, I went to lsigraph.com, and this is a great tool if you're in SEO, by the way. If you're interested in search engine optimization, it's worth checking out. But what I did is I just typed in a keyword here, New Balance shoes, and clicked generate, and it returned a list of what are semantically related terms to the seed keyword that I entered. So I just took this list that they gave me back, and I copied it into an Excel doc and saved it as a CSV. So simple as that. Now we need to get the data into RStudio. If you've used R a lot, then you know read.csv and some of those functions to get the data into RStudio as a data frame. But there's a much easier way in RStudio. You can just simply go over here and click Files and then navigate through your computer and find the file that you want to upload. In this case, mine was New Balance keywords, and I'll click Import Dataset. There's a couple of things here, but a little preview here. But the only thing you really need to pay attention to at this point is first row is names. So if you have a column header, you're going to want to have this checked. And if you just have a list of keywords with no heading, then you want to uncheck this. I actually went in and added a column heading called text. So if you want to follow along, you might want to do the same thing. So I will keep this checked for now. And then you can see over here in the code preview, RStudio has kind of guessed what I want to call my data frame, and they're just going to call it New Balance underscore keywords. And really all they did is just take what the name of my file was and remove the file extension. So you can keep that, or if you want to change it to something like, we'll just call it nb underscore kws, then you can do that. And they add view in here as a second function, but which you can remove or keep. It just shows you the table or the data frame after you upload it. It's really actually a good idea to kind of have that in there just to kind of double check. So you can see up here, it's in there, everything looks good, so we should be all set. So now we have the data in there, and there's a couple different things that we want to do to transform the data. And I was kind of looking around at how some other people were tackling this in R, and I found this great little article on datascienceplus.com. So feel free to check this out, but we'll kind of loosely follow this because it has pretty much everything we need. And again, if you don't use R a lot, one of the great advantages of R, and what I love about it, is someone has already created all of the packages we need in order to accomplish the things we want to accomplish. So we really just have to reuse things that people have already created in order to get where we want to go. And in this case, to create a word cloud, there are a couple different packages that we'll need to use, and those are TM, snowballC, and wordcloud. So once we have those, we should be able to execute everything we want to execute on. So, again, if you're not very familiar with R or RStudio, you may or may not know, like if you want to install something, you can just type in install.packages and type in the name of what you want to install. But also there's this nice feature in RStudio where you can just click R over here. It's under the Packages tab, and you can just kind of type something in. It'll drop down and show you the packages that are part of the kind of the official CRAN repository. One last thing, and I'm going to go ahead and click some of these. One last thing that you would know if you've used R a lot is that you can't just install the packages or download them. You need to activate them every time you start a new R session. You'll need to activate them in order to use them, and that's just called putting them in your library. And it's really easy to do. You can just type in library, and you remember you have to have already had installed it. But if I wanted to activate Snowball, I would type it in here, or to make it easier, you can just go over here. It shows everything that you have installed, and if you want to put it in your active library for this session, you just simply click it, and then it'll be active. You can see it automatically added the function there. Okay, so we have everything in our library to do what we need to do, so we're ready to get started. And there's really just 2 steps remaining. Before I get to that, I'm just going to hit Control L and clear my screen. I'm on a Mac, so if you are on a Mac, you can hit Control L and clean your console if it's getting too busy. But the 2 things we have left to do are 1, transform the data, and then 2, we'll just create the word cloud. So when I say transform the data, there's certain things we might want to do to data before it gets to the point where we're ready to analyze it. For example, we're doing a word cloud, so we want to kind of do a count or frequency of different keywords that show up. But we'll see things like women's, where there's an apostrophe, and then maybe it says, or somewhere else it says women's, and it doesn't have an apostrophe. But we really think that's one thing, right? It's just the word women's. So we want to do things like remove apostrophes in order to avoid duplication and not getting our counts in the right place. So when I talked earlier about transforming data, that's really what I meant. Now, one last thing I'm going to touch on before we kind of speed through the rest of this is we have to do one thing called creating a corpus, and we have to put our document or our data into a corpus in order to transform it. And corpus kind of sounds like a pretty academic term, and it is, but at the end of the day, it's just a series of documents. So, if you think SEO and you think Google is kind of crawling the web and it crawls all the different pages on the web, it would consider all the pages on the web a corpus, a series of different documents. Or you might look at your own website and say that's a corpus because each page is maybe a different document, and you kind of have its own corpus because it's a series of documents. So we'll just put it in this kind of corpus format. I don't know exactly what's going on behind the scenes here, but I do know in order to transform it, it needs to go from a data frame to being into a corpus. So the corpus that we're going to work with, I'm just going to call it NB_corpus, just because I like the name of it, the sound of it. And we'll use a function called corpus. And just want to make sure I have it. Okay, so we're going to use that function called corpus, and let me just actually clear my screen one more time. Okay, so if you type in corpus and then vector source, and then all we want to do here is just type in the name of our data frame, and that's it. So remember, the keywords that we added were called NB_keywords. So basically, we're turning that into a corpus with this function here, and we're just going to save it as something called NB corpus. So I'll go ahead and hit that, and we're done. It's really easy. So now that it's a corpus, we can do different things to it. And the first thing we'll do is turn everything to lowercase. So I'm just going to basically, again, we want to keep the name NB corpus. Every time we change something, we want to resave it as NB corpus. And you remember earlier we installed and activated something called TM. Well, TM allows us to do these transformations, and that's the reason we installed and activated it in the first place. So, basically what we're saying is take NB corpus that we created, which is just a document of all of our terms, and then transform it into lowercase, which in this case is just called to lower. And when you're done doing that, resave it as NB corpus. So that's all this is really saving. Boom. Now, you'll probably notice that we didn't really need to do that here because our keywords are all lowercase. But it's good to just go through this exercise because you may need to do that when you're trying to accomplish other things in R. If you think about maybe comparing two pages or just taking one web page and figuring out the most frequent terms on that page, you would not want an uppercase and a lowercase version of a word to be counted as two different things, so you'd go through this exercise. So a couple more things. Next one would be remove punctuation. So we'll kind of do the same thing there. NB underscore corpus and remove punctuation. Just like that, we're done. Easy. And then we'll do two more. We'll do plain text document. And we will do last but not least, remove stop words. So if you're not sure what I mean by stop words, so stop words are things like the and we definitely don't want to, if we're doing a word cloud, see that the most popular word is and, right, or the. It's just not terms that are important to us. So again, someone's already done this work for us. Someone's already created a package that goes through and does that in a document. And so all we have to do, luckily, is go through and reuse it. So you'll see here, I just could tell that this was outdated, but they used stop words and then in parentheses have English. That's actually changed. The way that looks now is stop words underscored en. So if we would have used this, they would have given us an error. I know that because I've done it before. And it would have just said, hey, now this should be stop words underscore en instead of stop words English. So I just got ahead of it and did that, and I'm wrong. Okay, maybe we'll try this then. Well, let me try it this way and get used to this type of thing with R because it does change from time to time, and it's really great at telling you. See, deprecated. Stop words is deprecated. Use stop word en instead, and that's exactly what I was trying to do. Okay, I must have typed it in wrong or up here, but anyway, it works now. So that's really it. She also has a STEM document in here, which I'm not going to do, but you definitely could have that come in handy. So STEM document is basically you basically take off like the ing, or let's say you have the word read, it could be read, reads, reading, and it's basically cutting off the end of the word and just showing the stem word so that you're not counting variations of the words so that you're counting all the variations of the words as one thing. We're not going to do that here, but it certainly can come in handy in certain scenarios. And then I have a word cloud. So now we're ready to create the word cloud. And earlier we had installed something called word cloud, and you simply just type in word cloud, and then you put the name of whatever it is that you want to create a word cloud from. And in this case, it was an NB corpus that we created and transformed and kind of filtered down. And I have a bunch of stuff here. I'm not going to go into it. You can play with it. It has to do with coloring and size and all of those different things. But the main thing here to keep an eye on is that you type in word cloud, and then in parentheses you type in the name of whatever data you want the word cloud to be created from. And you can see here's our word cloud. So some of these things are not a big surprise, but let me just type that in again. I'm not sure why it's not showing up in plots. It usually does, but anyway, I'll check that out later. Usually if you type that in, it'll just show up here in this plots section, and it's kind of overlapping too, so I might have some something goofy going on here with our studio, which I'll deal with later. But anyway, this should be, when you execute this, it should be designed a little better so that the words aren't overlapping, but the data is correct nonetheless. New and balance are definitely going to be the most often used terms we see, and then some interesting things like cleats and sneakers and walking. But anyway, that's it. Again, word clouds in themselves I don't think are necessarily that useful. There might be scenarios in like a client presentation or certain scenarios where it could come in handy. But most cases in digital marketing, I'd say that there's probably better ways to present things in a word cloud. But the reason I wanted to go through this is because there's a lot of great steps in here that, like creating the corpus and removing punctuation and things of that nature, that you'll definitely need if you're thinking about seriously getting into R and using it and applying it to SEO or digital marketing. So hope you enjoyed this. I'll try and post a few more here in the next couple weeks. And until next time, thanks for joining.